Let's talk about ammunition today. First thing we'll talk about is the different components of an ammunition cartridge. We have the bullet at the very end. That is what is propelled at the target. You have the case, usually made out of brass, but can be made out of steel or aluminum, or sometimes it's nickel plated. And that contains the powder or the propellant. And the propellant is inside of that right now. That at the back is the primer. The firing pin hits that and it crushes it a little bit. And inside of that is a smaller propellant explosive or whatever that goes off when it's crushed, and it ignites the powder and propels the bullet. And as you can see here, maybe you can see that. I don't know if that's going to focus or not, but hopefully you can see that that primer is dented, because this is a spent case. And when the powder goes off, or ignites, it propels the bullet using hot gases of it burning. Smokeless powder has been in use since the turn of the century, from the 1900s, or 1800s to 1900s pretty much. And it just burns. And it uses the hot gases of it burning to shoot the bullet and project it down the barrel. Black powder, which was in use before smokeless powder, it explodes, and the explosion is what propels the bullet. So modern powder won't really explode, it'll just burn. Okay, and now let's get into talking about the different kinds of bullets. Here, this is, I don't know if this is going to be hard to show this. This is a 9mm bullet, 124 grain, round nose. And I suppose I can just compare the different kinds of shapes for now. There's a lot of different kinds of shapes of bullets. We have round nose on the right here, and what is this? It's not. This is called semi-wad cutter, I believe, or flat nose. I think it can be called both. And they exist for different reasons. This will be better for if you want to shoot paper. It'll put a cleaner, solid hole through it, so it'll be more visible. While something like this will just tear right through it. And also for defensive purposes or hunting, this is probably going to leave a bigger hole in flesh. So a lot of people, if they use a solid, non-expanding bullet for hunting or shooting at a living thing, they'll use this because it'll leave a bigger hole. And before I put those down, these are both lead bullets. This is just cast lead, and this little ring around the base here, that is a lubricant to make it easier to push down into the casing, and I'll show you that later. And this, it's a little bit brownish. I really wish this would focus. It's a little brownish, greenish, or whatever, and I think that's because it has a copper coating around the outside. But it's mostly cast lead in there. And this is a full metal jacket bullet. And this has a lead core, and it's not always lead. Sometimes it can be steel, but laws in the United States, according to the law, you can't have a steel core pistol cartridge because it would be considered armor piercing. So all Full Metal Jacket pistol ammunition is going to be lead core with a copper jacket around the outside. And this is really just for the purpose of a regular cast lead bullet will dirty up a barrel very quickly just because it's a soft metal, and it'll just peel off chunks as it's going down the barrel and leave little bits in the rifling. It'll just make it dirty fast. But Full Metal Jacket, the copper coating, the copper doesn't leave much residue, so it's just a cleaner alternative. And here we go. This is a hollow point bullet. What hollow points do is when they hit the target, they will expand. And the purpose of that is to leave a larger wound cavity, and also to prevent overpenetration, because when it expands, there's going to be more resistance going against the bullet, and it expends some of its energy with the expansion, so there's less likelihood that it'll go clean through the target. So a lot of people choose this for defensive purposes, because if you have to shoot somebody in defense, you want to make sure that the bullet won't go through and potentially harm somebody or something behind the target. And I have heard a lot of falsehoods in my time on the internet about hollow point bullets, and one of the more common ones is that the claim is that they will penetrate body armor easily, and that is totally false. In fact, they are worse at penetrating body armor than just the jacketed hollow point, because of the outward expansion. So, just dispelling that rumor. And let's see what else we can talk about here about ammunition. I just sort of want to come back to the bullet shapes. If you have a lever action gun, or any gun with a tube magazine, and for those who do not know what that is, a tube magazine is when the rounds are stored inside the gun before they get loaded into the action. They will be like that. Yeah. So, if you have a gun like that, you're going to want to use a flat tip bullet, because what can happen is if you use a pointed bullet. Ooh, one sec, I'll show you here. Something like that kind of a pointed bullet. The recoil of the gun has the potential to slam these two together, and if it's a pointed bullet, it can hit the primer and ignite the cartridge inside the magazine, and that's a bad day. It's probably gonna destroy your gun. So if you have a lever action or any sort of tube-fed magazine gun, you're going to want to go with a flat point bullet. And now I figure I can show you how a whole cartridge is assembled on this machine here. And I really hope this doesn't get too noisy, because sometimes it can. So if it does, I'm sorry. So you start with the cartridge, a spent casing, I should say, and it goes in there. And all these dies around the top, you can see that all these dies around the top have a different function. And you know, I can remove that. This is full of primers, and you'll see that in a second. But I just want to take that off so it does not obstruct any view of the device. So the first die here is going to pop out the spent primer, and it's going to resize the cartridge or casing, because after you fire a cartridge, the casing will expand due to the combustion going on inside of it, so it needs to be resized down to the proper size. And there you see there, where there used to be a primer, or a spent primer, there is now a hole. So, then take a new primer and we stick it into the cartridge, or casing. I don't know why I keep mixing that up. And now this next die is the powder. It will put the powder into the case, and will also flare out the end of the casing so it can receive the bullet easier. And I don't know if you can see in there. There is now powder inside of that. I don't know if you can tell. And now, we'll take the bullet, and you're going to make sure to bring it all the way down so it properly rotates to the next die. And all you have to do here, I hope you can see that, is you can just set the bullet on top, and it should just fall right in. And this die I'm putting it into now will seat the bullet inside of the casing, and it will crimp a little bit of the casing to make sure it's tight in there. And this last die is just an extra crimp. Some people argue whether or not this is actually necessary, but I've got it anyways. It comes in the set, so you might as well use it. I think what the big purpose of that last one is for is, let's say you've got a cartridge like this. Now this is pretty big. It might recoil a lot, and if the bullet is not properly crimped in there, in a revolver, what can happen is, because the way the cartridge sits in there. Oh, I am so stupid right now. This is currently the cylinder that's in here is not currently for this cartridge, but what can happen is when it recoils, the cartridge, the whole cartridge has nowhere to go, so it can't really absorb any of the energy, but the bullet might get put or set back further into the casing, which you don't want. So you want to make sure it's crimped pretty good, and I want to tell you why you don't want that. Smokeless powder, it's not to be compressed, and when you measure how far the bullet needs to be seated down in the casing, you want to make sure that the powder is not being compressed, because that can be pretty dangerous, because then it can really increase the pressure that it pushes out when it ignites. It'll increase it to dangerous amounts, and it can damage your gun or you. So this kind of powder is not to be compressed. And now black powder, on the other hand, the old gunpowder that needed to be compressed to work properly, or I don't know, to work properly, or just to work to the maximum of its ability, or something. So that's when you see, if you ever watch any westerns or somebody loads a revolver that has black powder, there's usually a lever on the bottom of the revolver that pushes the bullet down into the cylinder and packs the powder in there. And I guess that's a different explanation, because that's a whole different kind of gun. That was before cartridges even came around. So let's see here. I think that's about as much as I'm going to be able to talk about right now about bullets. I guess I still have a little bit more I could talk about the bullets. There's different weights for different bullets. Take 9mm for example. There is the really popular bullet weights is 115 grain, 124 grain, and I believe 148 grain. And grain is just a way of, it's a measurement of weight. And there's a whole bunch of factors that go into choosing what weight you want, because some of them use less powder. So if you reload your own ammo, that just means that you use up less powder and it's more economical. But the lighter weights are going to go faster, and that might be what you want. If you're using a gun that is suppressed, and suppressed is a silencer, it's the same thing. You're going to want to go with, I don't know why I'm holding that up, because that's not a 9mm bullet. You can't suppress .357 Magnum out of a revolver, that is. But for 9mm, you're going to want to go with a heavier bullet weight, because a heavier bullet weight is easier to get subsonic. And what that means is if the bullet does not break the sound barrier, there's no crack or loud noise from it breaking the sound barrier. And if you have a suppressed gun, the whole point is to make it more quiet. So a lot of people go with the subsonic ammo because it makes it more quiet. So somebody reloading for a gun that is equipped with a suppressor is probably going to want to use a heavier bullet weight, because it goes slower and it's easier to get it subsonic. And I think that is just about it. So I hope you enjoy. Yep. Have a good one.